So about 8 months ago, 7 months ago, I released a video about why the Z6iii does not have bird autofocus. And then about 5-6 months ago, Nikon released firmware 2.0 for the 6iii, adding bird autofocus. And a viewer of the channel let me borrow their Z6iii, which I'm very appreciative of. Gave me their Tamron 70-200 G2 f-mount, and it's adapted with the FTZ 2. So I gave Nikon a few months to refine their firmware if they needed to. I didn't want to jump out there and be the first one to test the autofocus and then something be wrong with it and not work as intended. So 6 months later, here we are. And if you're new to the channel, I've had a Z9 since release, basically about 4 years now, and that had bird autofocus for quite some time. Plan on taking this out into the wild down at a local county park, township park, and I will be using the Z6iii on the 180-600. And then just for some fun, we're going to take the Z6iii down to the Pittsburgh National Aviary. We're going to shoot it with the 1.8 135 Plena, and we're also going to use the adapted 70-200 G2. And taking the camera down to the aviary and shooting at 1.8 and 2.8 is going to really show us how accurate the bird autofocus is whenever you go to pixel peep the images, because whenever you're at those apertures, you really don't have much room of error. And I will be recording the EVF with my Zcam Ipman Gemini, which I've had for a couple of years. There's a review on the channel if you want to check that out. Really, all it is you put this on your hot shoe just so it can hold it. This part goes into your Android phone. This HDMI goes into the camera, and you can screen record with the EVF. And we will switch between electronic shutter and mechanical shutter just to show the difference in the viewfinder. But in reality, for birds, for the most part, electronic is going to be perfectly fine. This is a semi-stacked sensor. It's not fully stacked like the Z9. So I expect to be a little difference in the viewfinder. But whenever it comes to the photos, I don't think it's going to be a big deal using electronic shutter, because it's not like you're using a non-stacked sensor where you're going to have massive rolling shutter and jello effect in your photo and video. And as a side note, for a future video upcoming, I did load this, what is this? KodaColor 200. I keep wanting to say Kodachrome, because that's not the right one. It's KodaColor. New Codex 35mm film. And I put it in the F5, and we're going to take it down to the aviary and see what we get. We're going to try a little bit of street around the park as well. But as I said, this will be a future video, so be sure to subscribe and stick around to check it out. When it comes to electronic versus mechanical in Z6iii, if you shoot electronic, you're getting 20 frames per second raw. If you're shooting mechanical, you're looking at 14 frames per second raw. Now, we're not going to dive, deep into the camera specs or anything. And for this camera, I didn't want to mess up the controls too much from the previous user. So we have the front FN buttons in the front. The top one is for changing autofocus type. The bottom one is going to be for changing between electronic and mechanical. And for the video that we're going to be shooting today, most of it is going to be 4K 120, and on the Z6iii it's going to be a DX crop, which isn't a huge deal for myself, as on the Z9 I usually shoot on DX crop 4K 120 anyways, and 4K 120 is not oversampled on either cameras, but it still gives you a decent picture. And we'll be shooting in 10-bit and log for all the video. And some of the video will also be 4K 60, etc. So with all that being said, let's get in the vehicle and get down to the park, and we'll start there with our, testing and experience of bird autofocus on the Z6iii. So we made our first stop down here at Big Rock Park. We try and look for some, in the wild photo examples before we get down to the Pittsburgh Aviary. We came across a heron and some, Canada geese, And the geese were, pretty good subjects. They're quite a ways away. They're actually on the other side of the Beaver River right here. And the autofocus system really picked up the head and tracked it across there. And it's very hazy. It's very kind of gross out right now. And then we also had a couple, attempts at, geese in flight. The camera tracked it perfectly fine. It was really me just being slow on the draw. There is a bald eagle nest across the Beaver River here, up there in one of those trees. It's about 100 feet off the water, probably about 500 feet across from where we're standing right here. I was hoping to find some of those, but they haven't shown up yet. So we're going to head off down to the aviary and use the 135 Plena and the Tamron 70-200 G2 Adapted on the Z6iii to really test the autofocus sharpness. And when I say by sharpness, I really mean, we'll see how accurate the autofocus is, because at 1.8, and especially the subjects close to you, like a lot of birds will be at the aviary, your depth of field is going to be minuscule. So it'll be a good test, an example of sharpness and accuracy of the autofocus system. So let's get in the truck and head on downtown Pittsburgh. So after reviewing the EVF, the photos, and the video, I can say without a doubt that the Z6iii firmware 2.0 for bird autofocus really nails it even at 1.8 on the Plena. And I'm very happy to see that because I love using bird autofocus on the Z9 and it works fantastic on that. The one difference I did notice between the Z6iii and the Z9 is there's a little bit of like a micro stutter on the box moving around in the EVF, but I think that's just a user interface problem and not really anything to do with the performance of the autofocus, because the Z9 has a fully stacked sensor and it doesn't have any of those little micro changes in the autofocus box, but the semi-stacked sensor does, so that just might be a readout speed thing. And it's kind of amazing that for $2,000, you can get a camera that has a semi-stacked sensor with 120 Hz EVF, that's blackout free and electronic shutter at 20 frames per second. It's kind of just insane to think that you can get that kind of performance for that price. It was very easy to switch between bird autofocus for the face detect or eye detect between two different birds in the same frame using a toggle switch on the back of the camera. That worked very nicely whenever you had that situation. And another little extra test I was able to do at the aviary that was unexpected is in the flamingo area. They turned on the sprinkler system overhead so that the birds would run around, and it was like a simulated monsoon situation, and the camera autofocus didn't miss a beat and it wasn't confused by the falling raindrops, which is really nice because it added some extra, environmental factors to the pictures and made them pop a little bit more. By the end of the day, I shot about 900 frames in about 10 minutes of 4K 120 and 4K 60 video, and I had about 57% battery left at the end of the day. So if you're just shooting photo all day long on one of those EL15C batteries, it's very easy for you to get about 2,000 pictures in one charge. And one of the cons that I did notice, it also happens on the Z8, Z9 as well, is if a bird has any like circles or any weird feathers around his face, the autofocus tends to jump all over the place a little bit because it's not sure where the face or eye is, as it's kind of like a butterfly that has fake eyes on its wings to distract the predator when it's getting attacked. So maybe the camera thinks it's a predator and that's its prey, and those fake eyes are throwing off the eyes of the camera. And this is one thing that I did notice I do want to point out. I'm not sure if it was like a setting in the Z6iii that I did not find. I did find it kind of strange and a little annoying that if I was switching between photo and video looking through the EVF, I could not switch instantaneously. So on the Z8, for example, or the Z9, you have your switch here, so you can switch between photo and video real easy. If you're looking through the viewfinder, you can switch without taking your eye away, and it just instantly switches between the two options. On the Z6iii, I had to constantly switch from one to the other and pull the camera away from my face. It would switch pretty instant at that point, and then put it back up to my face. It was just like a slight delay that I had to do to make it switch. I'm not sure why. Sometimes it would switch a little quicker than others, but if you had it up to your eye like this and you wanted to switch it, it would not instantaneously switch in the viewfinder. So I'm not sure if it's a Z6iii thing or my camera that I was using, it was like a setting in there. I'm not 100% sure. So if anyone else that has a Z6iii has experienced that, please leave a comment down below and let me know if I was the only one or not. But I can say with very high confidence that Nikon kind of knocked it out of the park for this price to performance camera, and including bird autofocus in it. And if you haven't gotten 2.0, I highly recommend you get that thing in there. So if you found this video useful, please hit the like, subscribe to the channel, and share it around to other people. Until then, I'll see you out there. Happy shooting.